Today, I'm going to give you my review of Marvel's Black Widow, plus a special announcement at the end of the podcast. And we'll get to that right after this. Can you believe the year is already half over? Well, it's time for me to review my goals. Have you reviewed yours? Wait, you don't have any goals? You know what? It's never too late. The Goal Process 101 ebook has helped me clarify the best and most achievable goals. Plus, it helped me set a plan in place to accomplish them. I mean, this podcast is just one of the results of the Goal Process 101 ebook. Check it out at christiannerdsunite.com/goals. It's never too late to start. And now, back to the show. Like I said, today we're going to talk all about The Black Widow, the new Marvel movie that just came out this past Friday. This is going to be my review, definitely going to be some spoilers, so be aware, and I'll remind you when I'm about to get to the spoilery part. But first, I do have some scripture for you. So let's start with Exodus 20:12. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God has given you. Proverbs 6:20. My son, keep your father's command and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. And Proverbs 22:6. Start children off the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. So as I said, we are going to talk about the Black Widow, and I have a big announcement I'm going to make at the end of the show. So make sure you stick around for the end of the show. So even if you don't want to listen to the spoilery version of my review, listen for a few seconds to get my general idea of what I thought of the movie, and then skip to the very end, and I'll give you the big announcement. So first, let's be straight. I am going to have some spoilers, but I'll start off with, I thought the movie was good. I really enjoyed Black Widow. I thought it was a good movie. It touched on some interesting ideas that previous Marvel movies really haven't dealt with. And I thought it was overall a really, really nice movie. Now, anecdotally, there are individuals I've run into that said, they didn't like the movie, that it was boring or they didn't care for it. But I really enjoyed it, and so did the critics and most of the audience that watched it over the weekend. Rotten Tomatoes critic score was 81%. Now, notoriously, Rotten Tomatoes high critic score usually means a very, very low audience score, and vice versa. However, the audience score for Black Widow was 92%, and that's with over 5,000 reviews already, and the movie just came out 4 days ago. Now, how did it do in the box office? Box office opening weekend did $80 million. That is $10 million more than F9, the Fast and the Furious movie that just came out. That movie didn't come out on demand at the same time as it came out in theaters. So the only way to see Fast 9 was to go to the theater and see it. And it only made $70 million. So this first Black Widow, the first Marvel movie for Phase 4, actually topped that, and it was available other places. So how did it open? It opened in over 4,000 theaters. And just to kind of give you an example, give you a reference here, The Last Jedi opened in 2017, and that opened also in just over 4,000 theaters. So we're really talking about a similar number of theaters are back open and available to go see movies at. So this is the top post-pandemic era movie opening so far. Nothing has made more than this. It also made another $78 million internationally, and Disney released this, which is pretty unusual. Generally, streaming services don't release numbers at all. They just won't. But Disney Plus did release that Premier Access for Black Widow grossed $60 million. So that puts them, just for the weekend, that puts them somewhere around the $200 million mark for this film. And, for a post-COVID situation, this is huge. It means that big blockbuster movies can do well if they work their systems correctly. And I'm pretty excited that it has done well. My personal thought is that if they did $60 million on Premier Access and they did $80 million in the theaters, Disney is probably going to keep this Premier Access same-day release thing going for a while. I can't see them turning it down. I think there's just going to be too much money in it for them to not do it in future movies. Now, I still haven't gotten to the spoilery parts, so you're safe. So when is this movie set? Because let's be honest, if you don't know what I'm about to say, this is not a spoiler. This is a movie from 3 or 4 years ago. We all know Black Widow dies in Avengers Endgame. So we know that's not part of this story. So when did this take place? So most people say that this took place between Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War. And that makes perfect sense. That's the place you would watch it if you wanted to watch all the films in chronological order. But we'll get to that a little bit more, because I will say there's a couple of things they do in this film that place it just slightly different than you might think. So this is not your typical superhero movie. So the majority of the characters don't have superpowers. The one that does have superpowers is kind of out of his prime at best. It's more of an action adventure spy thriller kind of combination. This isn't accurate 100%, but no analogies are ever accurate. But it's kind of a female James Bond in hiding in the Marvel universe. There's lots of military gear, there's lots of hiding out, there's some espionage, there's some mind control, there's some human trafficking. If you're wanting another Iron Man movie or you're wanting another Thor movie, this is not it. Okay? Let's just be clear. This is not that kind of movie. Now, I think people that say they didn't like the movie, I think they were expecting something different. I don't think it was that they had built their expectations up too high. I think they just were expecting another Endgame superhero movie. They were expecting another Thor superhero movie, and that's just not what this movie is. But I think it did deliver what I expected. Let's look at the characters some. So obviously we have Scarlett Johansson reprising Natasha Romanoff, or Black Widow. And if you watch the movies, you'll notice she's only called the Widow or the Black Widow a couple of times. Mostly they call her Natasha in all of the Marvel movies. And that is kind of the running theme of Marvel, that you don't necessarily name the superheroes. Iron Man gets his Iron Man name, and Captain America gets his Captain America name, but a lot of the characters, they don't get called by their quote-unquote code names very often. Now, we know the basic backstory of Natasha. She's a Russian spy turned defector to America, turned Avenger. She worked with Clint Barton, Hawkeye. There's the whole Budapest thing. Budapest. That is a joke in the show. So still, we haven't really gotten into any spoilers yet, so you're safe. If you don't know these things, these are just the basics that you should know about the movie, because you'll want to kind of orientate yourself. Next we have Florence Pugh, and Florence Pugh is playing Yelena, and Yelena is, in this scenario, she is Natasha's sister. And at this point, I'm going to say, this is your spoiler alert. From here on out, I am going to say some things that are definitely spoiler territory. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers, I'm going to give you just a few seconds, and you can skip forward to the end and listen to my big announcement. All right, I think that's enough time. Okay, so Florence Pugh playing Yelena, and Yelena is Scarlett Johansson's, de facto sister, Natasha's de facto sister in the movie. But we find out very quickly that they're not actually related. They are sisters because they were forced into a family together, not because they are blood relatives. And we quickly find out they're not even adopted, really. Now, Yelena is most likely going to be kind of the Black Widow replacement character in the Marvel Universe. That's what many are speculating. That's my guess as well, although there is something we will talk about at the end that could change how her character really fits in to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the future. But we'll get to that near the end. Now, we have Rachel Weisz playing Melina, and Melina is a operative of the Red Room. She's a scientist. And then we have David Harbour, and David Harbour is playing Alexei. And if you're familiar with this character from the Marvel Comics, he is playing Red Guardian. Now, this is kind of the Captain America analog for the Soviet super soldiers back in the 80s and 90s. I remember when Marvel actually published just a one-shot called Soviet Super Soldiers, and it listed all of these characters who were Russian superheroes, and they all had interesting powers, and they all had great looks. It's a fun little comic. Now, Alexei is a little narcissistic. He is a true super soldier. He does have superpowers, and we do get to see his basic super strength. He has some invulnerability kind of things going on. So, he's got definitely that Captain America vibe, but he doesn't carry a shield. So he is a little narcissistic in the movie. He wants to hear what Captain America thought of him. And, probably he's exaggerating his experience with Captain America. There's some conjecture. Did he actually ever meet Captain America? He implies that he has, that they fought against each other. And someone else implies he wasn't even here. He was still frozen in ice when you were doing that. So now in the comics, they definitely ran into each other quite a bit. And in fact, there were multiple versions of Red Guardian throughout the years. They kind of did some retconning at one point where, we just had the one Red Guardian, and then later on they decided, we're going to do this World War II version, and we're going to put the Red Guardian in there, but he's not going to be the right age, so we're going to put a different character in, a different person in the suit. In the Marvel Comics, there have been multiple versions of the Red Guardian. As I said earlier, there are other Soviet-era superheroes in the Marvel Universe, and I mentioned that one-shot book. It's really great. If you can find it, or if you've got Marvel Unlimited, you should check it out. But a couple of them get name drops in the movie, and I kind of liked that. It was a nice little bonus. Specifically, a large man he's one of the prisoners along with Alexei, and he is called Ursa. He calls him Ursa, and he also says he calls him a big bear. Now, in the comics, Ursa is a hero that transforms into a huge bear to fight. And at one point, Yelena calls Alexei the Crimson Dynamo. And it's a little, I couldn't decide if it was supposed to be her picking on him by using the wrong name or her forgetting who he really is and what his real name is and just calling him the Crimson Dynamo. Now, if you're not familiar with Crimson Dynamo, once again, a Soviet super soldier who is traditionally an Iron Man analog and an Iron Man villain. These were nice little jokes if you caught them. I liked them. It was kind of fun. And then we have Oti Fajbenle. I might be butchering that name. I'm sure I am. And he plays a character named Mason. Now, back to my comment earlier about this is kind of a female James Bond kind of thing, but not exactly. Well, Mason would basically be a really crappy version of Q. He is, he helps set up safe houses. He helps the Black Widow with equipment, that kind of thing. But he always brings really, really crappy stuff. So that's kind of fun. It's kind of goofy. He always complains that, Natasha doesn't give him enough money to be able to provide proper equipment. But he does bring a couple of MacGuffins along with him that kind of push the story along. He is definitely one of those characters who is kind of fun to have, but definitely is not required for the story. So that's who Mason is. Then we have the real bad guy. Now, a lot of you have been saying, well, you've got Taskmaster. Taskmaster's the bad guy in the movie. Now, this is a big spoiler, so be aware. Like most Marvel stories, there's not one bad guy, there's two. And Dreykov is really the bad guy. And Dreykov is in charge of the Red Room. He is the big bad, and we'll get more into his story here in a little bit. And then we have Taskmaster, who is this master mimic, able to duplicate every move that someone makes. And they even say, it's like fighting a mirror when you fight the Taskmaster. Now, we'll get to him later. Yeah, we'll come back to that. So here's a quick synopsis of the movie. First, it's not a straightforward origin story like many expected. This is a current story. Well, ignoring the fact that this technically happened 2 or 3 movies ago, but it only hints and has flashbacks to her true origin story. So it's not a true origin story. It is a story for today that she's going through while she remembers her origins. So we start off in 1995 and we're introduced to her quote unquote family. And that's really just a group of Russian spies working for Dreykov. And the family is Natasha, her sister Yelena. But we find out quickly, like I said earlier, they're not really related. We have the father figure of Alexei, who's the Red Guardian. And we have Milena, the mother figure, who's the scientist. And that they're all working together only for 3 years in Ohio. But during this 3 years, they build really close bonds because they have to live like a family to be able to steal the information that they're trying to steal from this secret base. And later we find out it's SHIELD base, but it's not really a SHIELD base. It was actually a Hydra base. So, So to quote Deadpool 2 and, all the Dominic Toretto memes, this movie is all about family. Yeah, I said it. It's all about family. So that's right. Get ready for all the Dominic Toretto / Black Widow family memes. I bet it comes back. So, and if you listen to anybody and they don't say that this movie was about family, I think they missed the point. Flash forward and Natasha is hiding out. She's on the run. This is, post Civil War, and General Thunderbolt Ross is after her. He's on her tail. She finds out that the Red Room, where she grew up and where she became an assassin, is still active, and that Dreykov, who she thought she killed, is still alive. The next big segment of the movie is Natasha reconnecting with this surrogate family, reconnecting with her sister, reconnecting with Alexei, and a jailbreak, reconnecting with Milena on her pig farm where she has mind-controlled pigs. Yeah, you heard that right. Mind-controlled pigs. And if you've read anything about the implants that Elon Musk has for pigs, that is totally what I was thinking of when this happened. So be aware that happens. Then there's, a jailbreak and lots of drinking, and there's a meal where they sit around a table, and there's lots of light humor and lots of anger and some emotion and, lots of explosions along the way, and some eventual reconciliation and family building. So, we're creating this narrative that this family has been separated, but they really do have a bond, that they really do care for each other, even though they don't think, each one thinks they didn't. So it's kind of an interesting story element. It definitely drives the rest of the film. Finally, we see this family start working together to take down the big bad and to free the women from the that are now assassins that are under mind control. So, these women who are part of the Red Room. Now, I mentioned earlier, I mentioned it briefly, and I said, there's some the human trafficking mentioned in this film. That's something that Marvel hasn't delved into at all, but it is a part of this story. And so there's some things going on there with human trafficking, and we kind of find out that, Natasha was just shy of sold to Dreykov as a someone who, this child had these certain characteristics that would be perfect for his experiments, and that her family was paid off, and that's what happened, why she is no longer with her mother. But we find out later that her mother searched for her for a long time and was murdered. So that is a poignant part of why that Natasha still wants Dreykov dead, why she goes back after him again. Now, notice earlier, I kind of left Taskmaster out of the story. So let's look at that. First of all, in the comics, we know that Taskmaster is a natural mimic, can copy any fighting style. He's a man, and they say he's like fighting a mirror. He fights Captain America quite a bit. He is basically a hired mercenary, and he can train people, and that's a big part of his job, is to train people. Now, in the comics, we actually see him train people like John Walker, U.S. agent, in the use of the shield. So, because of some changes that Marvel has made here, we're never going to see that. And it kind of makes me sad that we're not going to see a Taskmaster hired by Valerie to train John Walker to use the shield better. I think that would have been amazing, but we're not going to see it at this point. So the big twist reveal is that Taskmaster is being played by Olga Kurylenko, a woman. So I am perfectly fine with Taskmaster being a female in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's fine. But I don't think they used her well. I feel like the character was simply not implemented well. It is probably the biggest downfall of the movie. And for those who say that the movie's not any good or that it's boring, I think this is the key. I think they wanted to see Taskmaster as a mercenary hired by some big bad, and him being just this super character. And what we get is a completely silent person who is basically brainwashed and just shy of robotic, and she has like one or two lines in the whole film. And I just think it was not, she could have been used much better. I will say that the fight scenes in this movie were amazing. The real fight scenes and most of the CGI, I'm getting a little off track here, but most of the CGI was really good in this film. The fight scenes were well choreographed. They looked great. They were fast. They were shot well. I just think Taskmaster kind of got the short end of the stick in the film. And especially since Olga didn't get to remove her mask very often. You know, we only saw her face a couple of times in the film. So I think it could have been done better. So we do find out that she is also Draco's daughter. So Taskmaster is Draco's daughter, and that builds on this idea of family. Now, we also find out earlier in the movie that Natasha had called an explosion to kill Dreykov at one point, and that the girl, the daughter, was in the building at the time and became collateral damage. Natasha has carried around this idea that she killed a little girl to kill the guy that she was after, and that Barton was part of that plan. Now, there is a part there that, you know, we find out quickly, neither of them died. But that Olga's character, Taskmaster, Antonia is her name in the movie. So Antonia actually did get a lot of physical damage and some mental issues because of what she went through. And so this is a traumatic event in her life, and it has changed her. Now, it's a little unclear as to the mimic thing. There's some idea that she has a chip in her brain and in her neck, as he says. And so there's a question there, is she a natural mimic? Is she already this natural fighter, or is that part of this robotic part of her? And that's a little unclear in the movie. They don't make that, they don't spell that out well. I like to think that we're going to go with the traditional Taskmaster, where this is his natural superpower versus, and maybe we just didn't know that when she was a little girl, rather than this is something that she gained because of cybernetics that were added to her. That would be another reason that if they're saying it's cybernetic, that's another reason I think that it's just not a good implementation of Taskmaster. Although Taskmaster's outfit looks great. I think the shield could have been a little larger, but Taskmaster did really look really good on screen. And this reveal of it being a woman and being his daughter, that's supposed to be the big twist. But I didn't feel the emotion there. I just didn't. I get that they were trying to tie it in with family, so it's important. I get that Natasha was carrying around some guilt. But I think the loss of her surrogate mother and father was a much stronger emotional pull than this idea that she had killed a girl in as collateral damage. So definitely it's there. Definitely the story tries to communicate that, but I don't think it's a strong bond. I didn't like the robotic mind control idea here. And, we lose out on all those options that we could have had if we had had a more comic accurate version. Basically, you could have taken Taskmaster out of the movie entirely, and it would not have changed. So that's where I say this is a poor use of a character. If you could completely remove a major character from the movie and it doesn't change it, there's something wrong with your movie. But I still enjoyed it. I still thought it was a great movie. This is the one big flaw. And I think those people who didn't like it, I think they were hanging their hats so much on Taskmaster that that was the big hang up for them. Now, I'm not going to tell you all the ins and outs of the film. There's still plenty of good stuff for you to enjoy the film, even though you listen to all my spoilers. We all know that Natasha lives at the end of the movie. That was never in question. because we know she dies at the end of Avengers Endgame. Now, I've seen this a few times that people complain that, oh, it's all about, female power, or it's a girl power movie. It's really not. It does, however, contain very strong female characters that fit in the universe, feel like they should be there, and it created in such a way that it doesn't feel forced at all. This feels right. Having these four technically strong female leads in the movie really feels natural for this film. I read those scriptures earlier, and there's one that kind of, I think, best wraps up what this movie is about, and that's Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. Now that says a brother. Well, this is sisters. And in the scripture reference, it's most likely talking about blood relatives, but it could also imply brothers in Christ. And this family that we're looking at, where no one is related, comes together at a great time of adversity to overcome their past, to move forward, and to build a brighter future, and to take down the person that caused them the most grief in their lives. So I think that is a great way to look at it. Now, here's a few final thoughts. Now, back to where I said this movie is set. So most people say it's set between Civil War and Infinity War. But in the pre-credit, but kind of a post-log kind of scene, we see Natasha get a Quinjet from the crappy Q guy, and she says she needs to break some friends out of jail. So what that really means is that this movie took place between where she disappears from the Civil War movie until the very last scene of Civil War, where we see Captain America and the Falcon breaking out of prison. So, because she says she's going to take the Quinjet and she's going to break some friends out of jail. So that means this didn't happen between the two movies. Technically, it happened during Captain America Civil War, within the last, 30 minutes of the movie. Now, there is one post-credit scene, and this is a big reveal, and there's a lot of things to look at here. We see Yelena at Natasha's grave, so we fast-forwarded to today. And then we see Val show up, or Valentina Allegra de Fontaine show up. And, we saw her in Falcon and Winter Soldier recruiting John Walker as U.S. agent. Now, she seems to be maybe some kind of government agent, maybe, because she's in the government building. Like, he's changing in the government building into the new costume that she brought him. Did she just ask to borrow some government room? Hey, can I borrow this room for a little while, even though have no idea who I am? So, that's a little weird. So where does she actually fall? But so we see her recruiting John Walker as U.S. agent. But who she is and exactly how she's tied into the universe is a little unclear. And she possibly has some nefarious purposes, and I have conjectured on some of those. Is she building a Thunderbolts to replace the Avengers, since the Avengers are not around? But here we see her a little bit different this time, and we find out she already has Elena under her employ, and she offers her a new job, a new gig. She says, how would you like to kill the man who's responsible for Natasha's death? Meaning Clint Barton. Now, that is pretty earth-shattering for the Marvel Universe, so earlier I said Yelena, everyone was saying Yelena is going to be the Black Widow replacement. Now we find out she's working for Val already, and that she's taking people out as an assassin, and she may now be going after Clint Barton. Now, we all know this is not really accurate. Clint is not the reason she died. She gave up her own life for that. So that clearly puts Val on the wrong side of the issues, pitting heroes against heroes. So since Clint Barton is going to be in the new Disney Plus show Hawkeye, training his successor, will we see Yelena show up as the de facto bad guy for the new Hawkeye series? Or is this going to be a side story? Or is this at least going to be hinted at in the Hawkeye episodes? Or is this something we're going to see in a movie later on? There's a lot of conjecture there. We will see. My prediction, I'm going to throw it out there because it will surely be wrong, is that we will see Yelena show up at some point in some way in the Hawkeye TV show on Disney Plus. Now, overall, I really enjoyed Black Widow. There's lots of cliche lines. There's some light humor. There's not tons of it. This isn't a Thor movie. There is some light humor. There's some really gross stories about why the widows from the Red Room can't have children. There's some making fun of superhero landing and posing. That's kind of funny. And there's lots of family. And that's what this movie is about. Natasha says it in Endgame. She says she used to have nothing, and now she has this family, the Avengers. And I pray that you'll take a look at your family. Now, I know some of you may be estranged from family, but maybe you have deep bonds with friends that are now like your family. But whoever they are, I pray that you will take time to thank God for them and be there for them in hard times. Well, that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click all those buttons, all that. And you can also find all of our social links, our online store, and links to our YouTube channel at ChristianNerdsUnite.com. And while you're there, click on the support tab. We'd love you to join our Patreon. Now, the big announcement. Next week, I am starting a series of episodes, and I'm so excited. I've wanted to do this since day one. I'm going to start a series of episodes on tabletop role-playing games. I'm very excited about this series. I've already set up interviews for several different people. I'm planning 5 weeks, and I'm going to be welcoming a special sponsor to the show who is going to help us with our very first giveaway. So make sure you tune in each week. So next week, I'm going to announce the giveaway and how you can enter. Then over the following 4 weeks, I'll be announcing a winner each week. So make sure you join us and invite your friends to listen to the show as well. Well, before we go, I do want to leave you with this scripture that I read earlier, Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. We'll see you next week. Blessings.